As we approach Pesach, I'd just like to share with you a beautiful story which I recently read, and I think the lesson is very telling. It's a story that appears in Rabbi Yechiel Spiro's Haggadah. It's a true story about a little girl by the name of Lisa. She's a 5-year-old girl whose family was not particularly observant, and she'd been going to Hebrew school the whole year mainly because her best friend had wanted her to go as well. When Rosh Hashanah arrived, she came home singing the famous Dip the Apple and the Honey song. Her parents thought, yeah, it's pretty cute. They even ate the menorah-shaped cookies and biscuits that she brought home that were shaped in like a menorah. And their parents, whose names were Alan and Sherry Nussman, they tried really, I guess, to calm her excitement for Jewish studies because that really wasn't their lifestyle. They weren't absorbent, but it didn't happen. She was so caught up in the beauty of our heritage, and their lives were, to put it mildly, beginning to get a little bit complicated. Right before Pesach, she came home with a plastic cup that she had drawn herself and decorated, the Kos Shel Eliyahu, the Elijah's cup. And she said, Mummy, yeah, I want to use this for Passover. And the mother said, yeah, it's a beautiful work of art. She said, yeah, we'll use it for the Seder, even though they've never had a Seder in their lives. The only problem was that Lisa's father's Alan was not interested in religion. He wasn't interested in having a Seder. But as he was discussing it with his wife, he couldn't help be moved by his 5-year-old innocent desire to have a Seder. So he agreed. And Lisa was so happy and she was beaming when she heard that her cup was going to be displayed at the Seder. Pesach arrived, Alan put on a kippah, he began the Seder, hesitantly flipped the pages of the Haggadah a little bit. His wife said, try and care a bit more. They did the 4 questions of Manishana, they sang Dayenu. He went through the motions, he ate the matzah, and after the meal, the hour was getting a bit late. He told his wife and daughter he's going to sleep. So little Lisa said, but what about the cup of Eliyahu? So he was so fed up and he was losing patience. Eliyahu to him was no more real than the tooth fairy. He had no longer had the patience to play along with it. He says, I'm going upstairs. And on his way out of the dining room, to the horror of his young child, he grabbed this cup of Eliyahu and he threw it on the floor. It was nearly 1 o'clock in the morning and Alan was twisting and turning in bed. He felt guilty about what had happened and he wanted to check in, see how his daughter Lisa was. And when he checked in her room, the bed was empty. So he went downstairs to see where she was, and maybe she'd fallen asleep downstairs. But when he reached the dining room, his heart nearly broke. This is the way he tells the story. Her face was pressed up against the window. She had tears streaming down her face. And Alan couldn't help but begin to cry as well. And Lisa looked up to him and says, what's wrong? He looked up to Lisa and says, what's wrong? He said, why are you still up? Why don't you go back to bed? What are you looking at? And she just points out the window. And eventually she looks back at her father and says, Daddy, don't you see him? He's waiting right by the door for us to open it for him. And she turned back to her father and buried her head in his strong embrace, and shaking his head in disbelief, he stared out the window and could not help but wonder if his daughter really did see him. It's a very touching story, and I think the application is the following. You know that on the night of Pesach, which in the rabbi's words has always been the night of Emunah, it's a night where we imbue ourselves with faith and trust. We need to try and emulate the purity of the faith and Emunah that small children have. That Eliyahu is really standing outside every single one of our homes every year on Pesach night. And the question is, will we open the door to welcome him in? Will we even recognize that he's there? Will we go out to look for him? Children sometimes have a faith that is pure, that is simple, that is non-complex, that is authentic. And we as adults sometimes lose that, what we call emunah peshuta, simple, pure, unadulterated faith. And if we could only truly believe and have that simple trust that maybe the rallying call of L'Shana Haba B'Yisraelim at the end of the Seder, the next year will be in Jerusalem, won't just be lip service, but a final call for the day when Eliyahu will herald the announcement of the Mashiach and the world of peace that we all pine for so deeply will finally arrive. Wish you all a beautiful Shabbat and a future Chag Sameach for just under 2 weeks' time. Shabbat Shalom.